Election day is just around the corner. Yes, my name is Brad Pomerance. You're watching California Edition, and we are joined by Julie Rodewald. She is the Registrar Recorder for San Luis Obispo County. I love when you bring props. You know that. And this is an official sample ballot in San Luis Obispo County. I have to say, I've seen some sample ballots in other counties, and you know, there's a little competition there. I mean, some of these sample ballots are quite attractive, if I may say. Very functional.
Right.
Very functional.
We actually like we went to the small digest
Right.
size a couple of years ago so that we could insert them in with our vote-by-mail ballots primarily, but people seem to like them. The type is the same size, but
Right.
they're a lot more convenient than carrying around the big booklet. For a woman, they can slip into your purse.
I have to ask
take
you
them to
about
the polls.
vote-by-mail. Wow. I mean, what an explosion. You actually sent me statistics when
Right.
we interviewed last month. I think vote-by-mail started in the 60s, I think it was.
Right.
We've gone from like 1% of all ballots cast to sometimes over 50%.
Oh, well, in the primary, I think we were closer to 70%, and we would expect that we're going to see 50 to 60% of our voters cast their ballots
And
by mail.
a friend of mine recently registered to vote, and he asked me a question, and I looked at the registration card. All you need to do is initial to sign to be a permanent vote by mail.
That's right. So it makes it very easy for people. We automatically mail a ballot to them for every election. Now, what we've seen for registrations in this election, typically we assume that 50% of those who register are going to request to be permanent vote by mails, and yet it's gone through the roof. Our registration numbers in the last month have gone up about 3%. But our perm numbers have gone up 4.5%.
Wow.
So people are re-registering and asking to be permanent vote-by-mail voters.
Now, there is a very exciting development, I think, in terms of voter registration.
Right.
And that is we can now register online, which to me is a miracle. And the reason I say that is you have to sign a voter registration form.
Right.
But the state and the counties have figured out a way around that. Please.
So, yeah, right. The Secretary of State unveiled a couple of weeks ago the online voter registration, and what it does, it's actually a partnership with DMV and the Secretary of State.
And that's the key.
And that's the key. And then they send the data to the counties. If there's an exact match with a California driver's license or ID card, Social Security, last four digits of the Social Security, and a birth date, then that DMV, and the voter consents to using their DMV signature, then that will be sent to us. So that's what we have on file for the voter, is their DMV signature.
And what's remarkable to me is the number of folks who have registered online is enormous.
It's
enormous, more than I ever thought.
Right.
Kudos to all of you for getting the word out that we can register online.
Yeah, it's amazing. We started getting registrations like immediately, and the latest figures from the Secretary of State were about 220,000 over a 2-week period.
Yeah.
In San Luis County, we have about 1,300 in that same 2-week period. And we're working through the process. Once we get kind of the bugs worked out from the voter standpoint, it's absolutely seamless, and we're able to turn those files around the day after the voter registers. So 2 days later, they'll get a notification card in the mail.
And it's kind of ironic because you think about what's happening in other states, Pennsylvania, Florida,
Right.
where the news has been, I mean, look, I try not to take positions, but I admit I take a position when it comes to enfranchisement.
Right.
I want people to be able to vote. And so it's interesting that California is working to enfranchise people. And arguably other states are taking a different path.
Right, and there are other states that do have online voter registration
Yes.
too, but there are those that I know that there was a law in Florida that you had to turn the registration cards within 1 day. And so it discouraged people from doing voter registration drives.
Mm-hmm.
The voter ID
In
issues
Pennsylvania.
in Pennsylvania and in other states.
Struck down as we speak.
Right, and I would argue from the registrar's point of view is if we're going to have that conversation about do we need voter ID, let's have it not 60 days before
Right.
a presidential
And
election.
maybe let's
have it in an off year.
And maybe let's have it nationally.
Right,
Let's have
exactly.
it be a national question.
Exactly.
Is there a problem with voter fraud?
Oh, we don't see. You hear a lot about illegals voting and people voting twice.
It seems like you got to go through a lot to do that.
You do, and I mean, we try and encourage people to vote, much less, the voting twice. There have been some instances where people might be registered in 2 counties and they turn in vote by mails in both counties.
I wonder if they realize
that. They'll find out because they will be prosecuted.
And what's interesting is, I mean, we should be so lucky that every election is decided by 1 vote. I mean, I don't know. I just wonder what the payoff is.
Right.
To be that one additional vote.
Yeah, and I think that there are many. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, back in Chicago it was the vote early, vote often."
Yes.
But there are so many safeguards in place against that. You can't pay somebody for voting. Right. You can't give them anything.
And
of
if
value.
anything, what we're seeing is not voter fraud, meaning actual voting fraud. It's voter registration fraud.
Right.
I mean, you mentioned to me, and again, these are only allegations, but in June, and this is in the press, there were 900 voter registration cards dropped off at your office 3 days late, all 900 from Cal Poly, all registered Republican.
Right.
I mean, the Republican Party can only hope that all 900 people at Cal Poly would have registered Republican.
Right. And there were about 600 students and then, faculty and staff and others that they collected them from. But it certainly raises a red flag, whichever party it's with.
Oh, no, yes.
We see many more of our young voters voting as no party preference. We would never see
900 out of 900
with one party.
Yeah, and we are hearing similar situations in Florida. But that being said, I do want to ask you about another exciting development in my mind, because as you know, I'm all about enfranchisement, and that is same-day voting.
Right.
You need to disabuse us of one thing. Is there same-day voting in November of 2012?
No, absolutely not. It
Please.
will not go into effect until there's a statewide database.
Before
so
I forget,
we're talking.
Here's a real ballot.
Yeah.
Look what Julie brought for us. I'm not allowed to keep it because this is a real ballot. This is what it's going to look like in San Luis Obispo County. But continue.
It won't be in effect for at least a couple of years.
Right.
We're thinking it'll probably be 2016, maybe 2014. And I haven't read the most recent legislation, but I believe that there are the controls that the person would actually have to come to our office.
That's what I've read, yes.
They couldn't just go to any polling place that they wanted to and vote a regular ballot. It'd still be a provisional ballot. It would be, we would have to make sure they were eligible to be registered. They hadn't voted anywhere else before we could actually count that ballot.
Right. So I spoke with Secretary Deborah Bowen, and she expects that it would be ready maybe 2015. So not even in the next gubernatorial election.
Right, but for the next presidential.
Right. As I understand it, we do sense that, we do want to put safeguards in place. Enfranchisement or not, we do not want, any shenanigans going on.
Right.
Okay, you often make predictions, not about winners and losers, but about voter participation.
Right.
Have you made a prediction?
Well, we'll definitely see. Well, I say that. I believe we'll see over 80%. I think the last presidential we were 83%.
So this county, as an example, is a fairly high voter participation county.
Yeah, we definitely. Paul, I think that if you look at the trend, it's typically the smaller counties that have a higher turnout. It's in the larger counties. LA, unfortunately, always drags down the statewide average because there's so many voters there. But we typically are 10 to 15, even sometimes 20% higher than the statewide average.
And there's one point I always want to remind our viewers, and it deals with when your vote by mail ballot is received.
Right.
Because it is different than what you would think.
Right. So
Madam Registrar.
It has to be received by 8 o'clock on election night in order for us to count it.
Postmarks?
No, postmarks mean nothing.
Zilch.
Zilch, yeah. If we, if it's postmarked even 3 days before the election, if we don't receive it until after the election,
it's that simple.
We can't count it.
So do you go to the post office?
In fact, I'm usually there like at 6 o'clock. 5 or 6 o'clock, they'll let me know if they've gotten any Federal Express or express mail in.
Right.
And then sometimes we have like trucks that are driving up, and it's like, oh, I've got another ballot here for you.
So that's nice. So you're doing your best to collect.
Yeah, but it's really up to the voter to get them turned in. They can also turn them in at any polling place.
That's true. Even if it's vote by mail.
Even
I've done that
vote
before.
by mail, just drop it off.
Her name is Julie Rodewald. She is the Registrar for San Luis Obispo County, Election Day 2012, November 6th. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on California Edition. California edition. Guess what? Election Day, November 6th. 2 hot initiatives on the ballot, and Chris Ungar is here to talk about them. He is the president of the San Luis Coastal Unified School District. Of course, I'm speaking of Propositions 30 and 38.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes. So Proposition 30 is the governor's tax initiative, increases sales tax by 1/4 cent for 4 years, taxes on the wealthy for 7 years. What I have noticed is that editorial boards around the state are coming out in favor of Prop 30.
Yes.
We'll talk about 38 in a moment. What do you think,
Yes,
sir?
and that's exactly what I'm reading too, Brad. But it's not a ring. It's not what I would call ringing endorsements.
No, it's not.
I think what I would call it is hold your nose and vote for it because it's good for kids. If it doesn't pass, we're going to see decimation in the schools at the K-12 level. We're going to see. I've told you this before. We're going to see blood in the streets and the universities. We already know community colleges are suffering. Big article.
Let's talk about blood in the streets for universities, because
Yes.
there was some blood in the streets when the CSU system sent out a letter to every folk who had applied for admission, and it said, if Prop 30 doesn't pass, we're taking less students.
And
is that a political statement?
it absolutely is a political statement.
So is that proper?
I don't know. Is it proper to tell the truth to people? And what do you tell people or not? If you don't have this money and you don't have the space, do you tell people you can come to school and then maybe not? Right. Then pull the papers later?
Well, as
Brad?
you know, CSU is not admitting anyone until they know what happens.
Yeah.
With Prop 30. Let's talk about K-12.
Sure.
What the governor has said is that if Prop 30 fails, 15 days of school year cut.
Right.
True or scare tactic?
Oh, I don't think it's a scare tactic at all. We've talked before, and we know that school districts have already reduced the school year. The average person, and I would say the average teacher, thinks the school year by state mandate is 180 days. In fact, the state requirement for school days is 175 days. So we've already seen districts that have done furloughs. We've seen that across the state.
Well, Paso Robles in this community.
Paso Robles in San Luis Obispo County. We know other school districts throughout California are doing that.
Englewood Unified had to be taken over by the state.
Absolutely, and we can talk about that too because I've got an interesting figure on that one. Let me, if I can, let me just go back.
So many things.
That's so many things we can talk about, but let me go back to the days because it's really fascinating. So really, what they're talking about is not 15 days from 180 days, which would be horrible. We're talking about 15 days from 175 days, which is a state requirement. So all of a sudden now we're talking about 160 days of school. Most districts went to 180 days, 20 days less of school, 4 weeks less of school for kids. What are we going to do about that? And then districts have to make choices, and the choice is, do we reduce the school year? Do we lay staff off? Do we do both? The advice we're getting from the folks in Sacramento is try to keep your employees because they're your best investment in the future for your kids.
Tell me about Englewood Unified.
Englewood Unified. So what we heard is that if Prop 30 doesn't pass, we'll see 40 additional school districts in California go bankrupt. We already have 18 that right now are talking about.
They're on negative certification.
They're on negative certification, which means they can't guarantee that they'll pay their bills with the next year.
So they joined Stockton, they joined San Bernardino, they joined Mammoth Lakes.
Well, those are cities.
Of course, but it's still it's a governmental bankruptcy.
Well, actually, it is in a sense, but for us, I don't know if it's worse or better.
So Englewood may have been the smart one to declare problems early, because I can't imagine the state's going to bail out 40 districts.
What are you going to do? 40 districts, I don't even know how much more money we're talking about. And what I understand, because I checked on it today, we're not just talking about 40 districts, we're talking about a possible 58 districts. Now, 58 districts out of 1,000 districts in California. Some of those are going to be bigger and some of those are going to be smaller. And of course, what we've talked about before is the state just doesn't give you money.
No.
What you do is you go to the state and you beg the state for a loan.
And the superintendent of public instruction is taking over Englewood Unified.
Absolutely.
Tom Torlickson's taking it over.
Right, and so they put their man in there, or woman,
yes, this time
whose
Tom.
sole job is to get that debt repaid.
I have to ask you about Prop 38.
Sure.
That is Molly Munger's initiative,
Yes.
which increases taxes on everyone income-wise from 0.4% to 2.2%, sends the money into a lockbox for education. One could argue it's better for the kids, but one could also argue that it's getting killed in the polls and by editorial boards.
Yes, it absolutely is. From a school person's perspective, in a lot of ways it is better for kids because it will bring money directly, as you say, into that lockbox that we'll be spending in the classrooms. It has some pretty strong restrictions in it. I think they talk about no pay raises. Well, if we're going to increase a school day, staff are going to ask for more money, as they should.
I think it's very difficult at this stage when you're in the 30s to see it pass. I mean, look, anything could happen.
Right. Yes, and that's right. I thought interesting today, an article that I read was, again, hold your nose on 30. Please vote for it. I get down on my hands and knees and beg people to vote for it because I know what the dire circumstances are going to be. But Prop 38, I think it's interesting because one of the things is it looks almost more at true tax reform in California, and that's one of the things Proposition 30 doesn't do.
So what do you think? You're talking to your folks. You're running for re-election, although you're running unopposed.
I know, I got lucky.
Right, but that being said, right now Prop 30 may be in the mid-50s. Is that guarantee of passage? Probably not. The cigarette tax was at 60 when it failed in June.
And I think we're talking about Prop 30 at the data we're recording this at 50 to 52, 51, 52%.
I've seen 55.
I don't think anybody knows.
Right.
It puts it in a very dangerous position.
Okay, I got to shift gears and talk about API, Academic Performance Index.
Right.
Major reform passed. Not a lot of press about it, but I think it's a very significant piece of legislation.
Yep.
What can you tell us about the API and how it had been implemented?
Right. Well, the primary factor with API was test scores, the standardized test scores.
Sole factor.
Right. And if your kids didn't do well, then your school didn't look good.
Right.
So now what we're talking about is only 60% of a school's API will be reflected by their test scores, and then there are other factors that will be going with that as well.
To me, Chris, this is huge reform.
It is big.
I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. Just as I perceive it, this is very, very significant.
This is going to be really significant. And I think it becomes even more significant starting in about 2014 when we get those Common Core standards with the Common Core assessments, which will look more in depth at what students are learning.
And what's ironic is that this new reform was passed in the wake of rising STAR test scores during a time when budgets were slashed for public schools.
Sure, and you have to wonder what's going on in classrooms, and you have to wonder if the STAR tests actually reflected what students are learning, or because we know that they're multiple choice tests, as some of us like, multiple guess tests.
But that being said, what's going to happen under this reform is that the Board of Ed will work with the superintendent, Tom Torlakson, to incorporate other factors.
Sure.
They're going to look at student readiness for college, technical training. They're going to look at science, social science, which really is not on the STAR test right now.
No.
So what do you think?
I think it's great.
Is it too amorphous?
Oh, I don't think we'll ultimately see it be amorphous because when you're testing kids and you're doing standardized testing, we have to have some things to judge it against. But is it a good thing to look at other factors besides raw test scores? I think yes.
How do you evaluate science and social science without a test? How do you know if a school is performing well without a test? I mean, I hate to be so triple R on you, but how else do you do it?
I'm not sure how they're going to do it. I don't know if they're going to look at pass rates. Maybe they want to look at advanced placement rates and then passages on the advanced placement test because there are advanced placement, physics, chemistry, those kind of tests.
Stated.
So we might be looking at that. There was a suggestion a while ago to look at the California Golden State test. I don't even know if they still give that anymore. But I think they will figure out ways of doing it.
High school exit exam.
Could be the high school exit exam. The high school exit exam, I'm not sure how much of that tests. Plus we're looking at, I still believe it's about an 8th grade level. I know,
for high school graduation. His name is Chris Ungar. He is president of the San Luis Coastal Unified School District. I'm Brad Pomerance. Thanks for watching California Edition. It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Glad you're still with us. Our guest is Bob Kelley. He is the mayor of Atascadero. And so I want to speak with you about Atascadero and what other cities are trying to do to attract folks to the cities, be it tourists, be it businesses, because as we know, the state has taken away a big tool to attract business, and that's redevelopment. But you're moving on from that.
Yes, we're going to play the game of deck of cards that's been dealt to us.
Well
we're not going to
stated.
sit here and suffer about it. We're still going to go forward. Recently, the City Council has budgeted $176,000 towards a new promotion program, and we figure that we have to go after the tourism business that comes not only to Atascadero but the entire county.
And I think about Atascadero in North San Luis Obispo County. I mean, you are extremely well located if you consider some of the assets of that area. I dare I say some of the wineries near Atascadero and Paso Robles, but it all bleeds over, correct?
Well, actually, if you look at Atascadero, we are more centrally located to the tasting rooms than Paso Robles is. And not only that, but we have real close access to Highway 41 that goes to Morro Bay, which is a big tourist attraction. And of course, along Highway 41 is our lake park and our zoo that we have. You can go 3 or 4 miles up the road and take Highway 46 over to Cambria and have Hearst Castle. Or then, you can
Hearst Castle, I mean, I must stop you because Hearst Castle, I recently went there with my family. I mean, it's pure majesty.
Oh, it's incredible. You just wonder, how did one guy do this? And it's well known, all over the country or the world, really. People come to see that. And then also up north of Paso Robles, we have the 2 lakes that are available. We have golf courses around there. We're actually more centrally located than all of the other cities up there.
Okay, I have to mention the zoo, though, because there's been a lot of news about the role of government. We know that during this presidential campaign season, there was a discussion about what role government should play, and it really predates the 2012 presidential election. Should government be involved in zoos, in parks, in whatever it may be, fairgrounds? I know in Los Angeles, for example, there's been a big debate about whether LA should privatize the zoo. Should they privatize LAX Airport? Talk to me about what your zoo is doing for Atascadero and the view behind it.
Well, our zoo is financed by the city, and we just formed a new zoological society. And I hope with the new people on board that they'll be able to increase fundraising and improve our zoo. Over the last couple of years, the city, we've put $2 million into our zoo. Part of it was the redevelopment money. And we had a group of people from the San Luis Tourism come up there, and they were unaware of what we really have and what a great zoo it is, and that's part of our promotion program.
And it's actually considered, it's an accredited zoo. I remember I spoke with your zoo director. This is not like a pocket park zoo. I mean, this is a real zoo.
There's, I think, 222 or 226 accredited zoos, and this little zoo is one of them. And if you ever get the opportunity to go through the zoo with Ellen Baker, who's the zoo director, and be able to stop and have him talk to you about some of the animals, we have some very exotic animals in there. And we also are on the sharing program with other zoos where some of our animals go off for breeding rights. In fact, I think our tiger will be leaving in a year or so.
But it's interesting because I think about Atascadero, and for better or for worse, it's been seen as a nesting ground for certain Tea Party groups. And I have to think that that very issue is a hot topic in Atascadero about the role of government. Should government be in zoos or airports or
Well, I think you have to take each case individually. Obviously, there's some people that do better than others. And in our case, I think we're doing a very good job with our zoo. It's nice that we are able to control it. And I would hate to see us lose that and have it go
And I will say this, there's no suggestion that this zoo is going to privatize. No. This is I've made this up in my own mind just because of what's happening in Los Angeles. I cover the whole state, and it's very interesting to me that a zoo of that magnitude is going through such trials and tribulations over ownership.
Right. I think one of the nice parts about our zoo is that the 4th of July, Councilman Kelley and myself, we initiated the 4th of July celebration at the Lake Park, and we opened up the zoo free for that day. And we had 1,500 people that were accounted for, and I think we had a few more that slipped in that didn't get accounted, and it was free. So we were able to have 2,000 people go to our zoo, and it was a great opportunity for some of the younger families that are on limited funds that were able to come and see our zoo, and they'll pass the word on what a great little zoo it is.
I want to talk to you about the history of San Luis Obispo County as well as Atascadero. Folks, well, I'm sure they do realize that there's a lot of history on the Central Coast. We think about the missions in this area, and it's hard to believe that Atascadero is going to be 100 years old.
Yes, next June I think is.
Tell me about that.
Well, we're very, very excited about it because, as you know, our Rotunda building, which was the old city hall, suffered significant damages during the San Simeon earthquake.
It's very significant.
Well, about $38 to $40 million worth, and the renovation of that is progressing great. We're ahead of budget. We're on schedule. And in fact, we were able to upgrade it quite a bit. And if you've ever been to the state capitol in Sacramento, where the domes are all ornately painted, our Rotunda building is going to be like that. And I think it will also become a tourist attraction because from some of the displays that I've seen, it'll come in right below Hearst Castle, I think.
I do want to ask you about the drive for tourism because, look, this is the Central Coast. And I know there's a lot of competition, friendly competition amongst the 7 cities in San Luis Obispo County. You do have an overarching organization that tries to promote all 7 cities in the unincorporated areas. But how do you attract visitors when, God, all 7 cities are beautiful and they all have their assets?
Well, I think we all have to learn how to share and work alike. Not one city has everything that all the tourists want to see. We have our lake park and our zoo in town. We're centrally located to the winery. You know, San Luis Obispo has got the Performing Arts Center. You go down the coast, they have the beach, Pismo Beach. Mm-hmm. You can go to Cambria, they have the Hearst Castle. Paso Robles has, a fine selection of restaurants and what have you. And I think we're finally have got to the point where we're all working together that, we can recommend somebody, if you want to go to Paso Robles and go golfing, that's just fine, and you can come back. Come back. And we have to learn to work together, and I think we're getting there very closely.
I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, but I just must because I get asked this quite often when people know that I come to San Luis Obispo as part of my duties here with California Edition, and that is on the issue of the Tea Party in Atascadero. And I don't really have an answer because we know that the Tea Party has had tremendous success in various portions of the country, especially the South, the Midwest. California had not been seen as a hotspot for Tea Party activity, but Atascadero's name keeps getting brought up when we think about the Tea Party. It got brought up in Debbie Arnold's campaign when she ran for supervisor. In a recent election, when Abel Maldonado had been running for Congress, it got brought up again because of an invitation he accepted and then rejected from the Tea Party based in Atascadero. What can I tell my friends when they ask me about the Tea Party and Atascadero?
Well, I'm kind of like you. I really don't have the answer either. I haven't really spent a whole bunch of time concentrating on the Tea Party. I like to spend most of my time on the issues in Atascadero.
But is it a myth? You know what I'm saying? Is it a media invention, or is there? And again, I'm not casting any aspersions. Right. I'm genuinely interested.
Well, I think some of the stuff I read, they have some legitimate causes, that I can stand behind.
But aside from their causes, is there truly a cohesive group in Atascadero that identifies?
No, there is a group there that gets together, and they're very, very forceful, and they're organized and everything. And I admire them for coming out. This is what America's about, is freedom of speech, and they can come out.
No.
And some of these people, they help keep the system honest.
No, there's no doubt. I mean, no one takes away. Look, we love involvement, and
right.
We only want people to get involved in democracy, this great experiment that we have. Do they have power? Can they influence policy?
Well, I think at some point in time they may be able to. They're just kind of getting started, and if they're successful and they get bigger, the politicians will start listening to them.
I got to say, recently in San Luis Obispo County, there was an election for supervisor. Debbie Arnold was running against Jim Patterson, who she had lost to 4 years ago by 300 votes. Right. This time around, she won quite significantly.
Yeah, well, Mr. Patterson had endorsed some issues in the county that were not very, very popular.
Could it be the activism of the Tea Party?
Well, I'm sure they were part of it.
Okay, His name is Bob Kelley. He is the mayor of Atascadero. I'm Brad Pomerance. Thanks for watching California Edition.